Hi everyone, welcome back to Rod TV. And it's that time of the month where we talk about the month ahead for you and a little bit for everyone else as well. I've got something really interesting to tell you about how astrology sees your sun sign and that whole identity, but I'll get back to that. Let's really look at what's going on for this month ahead before we get to that interesting little discussion I want to have with you. Well, as we know, it's been quite a hectic time. You remember a couple of months ago, I told you about the February March period being a particularly difficult one. It's not like it magically switches off as we go further through April and into May, but gradually the intensity of that period of stress that we've been through will fade a little bit, at least for most of us, or should I even say some of us. I can't guarantee the same for the people in charge of South Africa, and especially the president, who still looks like there's trouble ahead. Remember, as I said, for him, May is an interesting time where, at least behind the scenes, there is more drama for him, but possibly a little bit more drama from Jacob Zuma for us as well. But we've spoken enough about Jacob Zuma for a while. Let's try and talk about much more important people, such as you. As you know, when I look at the month ahead or anything like that, I really like to group the signs together because acknowledging that we're not those isolated sun signs and we're actually all part of a bigger flow and a bigger process that all of us experience at the same time. It might be funny to think you can chop up the world into 12 easy pieces, but in reality, there aren't even 12 pieces. There's one piece with, 7 billion different people on it, having 7 billion different experiences, except that we're on the same planet, under the same moon, following the same natural cycles, and similar seasons, at least times when season changes, as all the other people on this planet. And those are the patterns that we look at this time when we look at the month ahead. So starting with the cardinal signs, that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Well, cardinal means leadership and going ahead, and this is the time for you to be going ahead. This is particularly where selfish ideals or plans and those of your family and the people very close to you actually need to be pushed forward. You might have been too caught up in a whole bunch of other stuff for a little while, and it's actually time to clean out all of that and prioritize a little bit. Put your own interests first and the interests of your family first. That's especially true for Cancerians this particular month, who also seem to have got caught up in a whole bunch of stuff, and also for Capricorns, who also seem to be a little bit enslaved at the moment and doing a million things and very little to show for it along the way. So narrowing down and focusing on what's yours and focusing on what's important. Capricorns, you also need to be paying attention to your personal life. Invest energy back into your relationship. It's a little bit like you need to inject the romance back into your relationship. Could also be true for some of the Cancerians and other cardinal signs amongst you. But Capricorn, that's your job now. And focusing on what you do best. That's also especially true for you Cancerians. What you do best is people-related things, food and children-related things, if you're typical of your sign. If you're not typical of your sign, you might need to know about your rising sign, and it can be useful to hear about that one as well. Stay tuned for after this section to learn about your rising sign. As I said, the same is still really true for the other cardinal signs as well. Capricorns also need to focus on what they do best, and that's following own goals. And Librans also need to focus on clearing out other people's stuff. That's particularly there for you because you've got involved in so much stuff, it's almost like you've forgotten what's important to you. Librans, go back to your roots or go back to your home. Go back to those core issues. Home is really one of those, and it's, very simplest, could be good time for cleaning out house and home and just getting back your sense of space and your sense of where you're coming from. All cardinal signs, you need to kind of reroute yourself in some kind of way. So a spring clean is a great way to do that. Getting back to basics and focusing, like all the stuff I've been talking about, another great way to do that. And really trying to tone down how much you extended in 500 different directions. That's also true for Aries in another way. The hectic action in your life has actually affected your relationships, and it might feel like you're losing a little bit of control. Jacob Zuma, the Aries. Didn't I say I wasn't going to mention him again? But a good metaphor for losing control. Hey, so Aries, it might not be as bad for you. Presumably, it isn't as bad for you, but you could be inadvertently affecting people close to you. So it's important to look at what relationship stuff has been going on. Again, come back home, focus on you and your life and what's important to you, and acknowledge the collateral damage it might have had on others around you while you've juggled too many things. So this is a time where you can also then make some changes that hopefully have some long-term benefits or effects so that you don't find yourself in either such a precarious situation again or really just such a chaotic situation. It isn't so precarious that anything is bad about it, but it can be a little bit chaotic. So, cardinal signs, focus. For the fixed signs, well, it's the month of Taurus that's that's just begun really already. And I've repeatedly said during the course of this year that things are not too hectic for Taurians. While that remains true, you still need to take some charge of things now and benefit from that. And the area is your professional life. This is an opportunity to fulfill some goals or maybe some dreams or even if they're just some ordinary plans. But this is kind of the go ahead time. For fixed signs, including Taurus, but actually for all of you, that's Taurus and Scorpio, and Leo and Aquarius, for all of you, creativity needs to be on the table. Creativity isn't only about art, it's about what you do either as a natural ability or talent, what comes easily to you, or what you do to express yourself. Hey, for some people that can even be something like a sport. But the important stuff is you actually need to put that creative or self-driven action into the work you're doing. In reality, for work, what I'm really saying is that you need to think a little bit out of the box and apply that into what you're doing, and you're going to get great results. You may need to take a little bit of risk, but be careful not to rush in where angels fear to tread. You're not usually amongst the signs that take risks, but your judgment could do with a little bit of fine tuning at this time. So maybe a second opinion as to whether you're rushing here too fast. Ask one of your cardinal friends. They might be able to help you with this. The creative issue is especially important for Aquarians and Scorpios. Aquarians never like depending on other people, but Aquarians, you might find yourself requiring resources from other people, depending on some kind of either input at the very least, but actual resources or availability or doors opening or something like that. That's going to be what you have to deal with. And you tend to be a little bit stubborn and on your own path, and you might be shooting yourself in the foot if that's the case. So open up to all of those kinds of things. Don't be afraid of losing your own creativity or your own approach. Remember my bigger definition of creativity, and this is a time where you're supposed to kind of do what comes naturally and apply your own thing. So all of that is still going to be possible, especially since you're able to get resources from other people. It's not being disturbed by that. So that's the trick. Become a little bit more dependent and find yourself more individualistic and able than ever. That might apply to other areas of your life, including your relationships. For all fixed signs, again, I'm talking to Aquarians and Scorpios and Leos and Taurus. Relationships are important at this time. So Scorpios, who I've also been saying are amongst those that really need to get their creative energy onto the go. Scorpios might find that relationships are really happening at this time and can be a little bit challenging. Well, Scorpios are having it easiest amongst relationships, but all of you and the Taurians and Aquarians might also find relationship stuff a little bit settling. It's time to take a few steps back and be a little bit more cautious in that regard. Creativity also refers to things that we love in our romantic life and our sexual life and all of those things where we really pour our own personal energy into it. And fixed signs, you can hear that that's what we're talking about for you in this month. Both the creative and the romantic side can benefit from you putting a lot more into it. But generally speaking, we continue to go forward. Money's doing quite well, especially for Leos. For all of you fixed signs, it might look as if things have been going well and then suddenly I hit a plateau or even what might look like a setback. Don't worry, it's no setback, it's no plateau. It's just the natural course of things. Things don't just forever go upwards. Take some time and you'll be back on the track in June and the months ahead where things continue to plod forward. For those of you in new relationships, that will follow that pattern as well, or even who just getting back into the dating scene. Same thing. You'll make some progress, there's a bit of a plateau, and then further progress is made. Apply that knowledge to everything, and you're going to find that this month works much better for you. You may even end up a little bit richer at the end of it. Mutable signs are having a bit of a challenging time. You guys need to be a little bit more cautious this month, especially the Sagittarians, all the way through to the end of June. Take things a little bit more slowly. Double check everything. Don't do reckless things. Amongst the mutable signs, Sagittarians and sometimes Geminis tend to be a little bit reckless, and sometimes the Pisces are a little bit naive and can also end up rushing in a little bit where they shouldn't have. But it's mostly you Sagittarians that really need to ensure that you don't do something that you can trip over, that you can shoot yourself in the foot with, or that can at least get you into some kind of trouble. Never heard of a Sagittarian that's really afraid of getting into trouble because they can get themselves out of it quite fast. But for the sake of your own longer term goals, this is the time to take a few steps back and be more cautious. For some of you mutable signs, especially Pisces and Virgo, the reason could be because of some confusion and you're not exactly sure what's going on and what you're supposed to do about it. So rewind a few steps. Mutable signs, there's old stuff that needs clearing up. It's a little bit like you've got some unfinished business that needs to be finished. And if you wrap up and tie up and finish up a whole bunch of stuff, you'll be much clearer for the go ahead into this month. And in fact, you may even get some opportunity to have some old dreams or ideas come to the table and get the chance to be true. Old dreams don't necessarily mean the biggest, most important things in your life, but nevertheless, it still is a time when you can actually get some things that are important to your heart onto the table as well. Virgo can also come through other people, those opportunities. In fact, Virgo's meetings with other people, whether pre-planned or not, this month can be quite instrumental. It's a little bit like you will cross the path of some important person. Never as dramatic as that. Might be someone you already know, might even be your own boss. But the end result of that meeting is that something beneficial comes from that for you. And Geminis need to take it a little bit more carefully about who they're engaging with. You are one of the most social signs simply because you try and keep all the people happy all the time. And you like to talk. And so this is a time to be careful about what you say, whether it's as extreme as gossip or something you didn't realize and you didn't mean to say to someone, or you didn't realize it was a big secret. Geminis, this is the time to be more discreet. You need to actually keep some secrets, and keeping them to yourself can also focus you on what are your ideals and what are your dreams at this time, and you can go forward for that. Remember, as I talk, I'm not just talking to Geminis, mostly focused around you, but the mutable signs in general. So you can hear there's an overall theme for all of us to be a little bit more circumspect, keep to our own goals, deal with our roots, cleaning out, getting back down to basics, kind of like we all need to ground ourselves a little bit. There's been so much madness going on in the world. There is no doubt a whole bunch more to go. In South Africa, we're only gearing up to election season, so none of that's going to quieten down. So before we all get swept away with it, I think the message in the stars this month is chill, ground yourself, get back to basics, get back to your stuff, clear out the garbage, focus on home, roots, and family, and we'll be much better readied for the months ahead. One of the things that always comes up, even for me, when I talk about the month ahead and when we talk about sun signs, is the whole issue of how important are sun signs, or are we characterized by sun signs? I've discussed that at length in an earlier episode, and I don't want to go there again. I just want to do a quick Astrology 101 from a question from Stephen, who called to ask about this particular issue and said, Rod, I wonder if you have a way of diagnosing a person's sun sign in a social scene, like, say, a set of 10 criteria. That would help me know a person is certainly an Aquarius or something. Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, astrologers, amongst other people, sometimes can't help themselves but try and guess someone's sign or say that's just like an Aquarian or something like that. But that isn't really how astrology works at all. As I've said before, sun signs are essentially a modern invention that are not a majorly important part of astrology and by no means are the definition of our personality in any kind of way. So my answer is that firstly, it's not the sun sign, it's the rising sign that we take out into the world. While the sun sign is some essence of ourselves that is related to a core identity and related to one of the classical ideas or part of the classical ideas about soul, fundamentally, that's not who the world sees. When we put ourselves into the world, we have a personality which comes from the Greek word persona, which is the word mask. And so people often think that personality is a mask that we hide behind, but it is really a mask that we mediate with the world. And the personality is a construct that we have that is heavily influenced, obviously, by our genes, by our upbringing, and our society and everything that's around us that teaches us how to be. But it's got also a lot to do with how we look and how we perceive ourselves in that sense, even how we dress and take ourselves into the world. We think we have so much freedom with all of those things. Actually, we don't. I mean, we all walk into a clothes store, there's a whole bunch of stuff we would never even look at, let alone try on. So we don't have as much freedom as we'd like to imagine in defining that personality. But that is a very core part of our identity. It might be a mask in the sense that it obscures a lot of the real self because it puts a social working self into the world. And so the interesting thing about that for me, and this rising sign is very much based on the time and place that you're born. So the interesting thing about that for me is that the knowledge of the ancestors, astrology is very ancient. It shows us that essential identity and social identity are not at all the same thing. And what that social identity, what's so interesting about it, is that astrology says it is based on appearance and action. And the lesson in there is how much we judge each other by our actions. Stephen's question was, can I identify the sun sign in a social situation? My answer to him was, no, but maybe I can identify the rising sign in a social situation. And why is that? Because astrologers know, according to our rising signs, how we're likely to dress and how we're likely to behave in a social situation, even if it isn't a social situation, even on our own little mission. Astrologers can identify that behavior and identify that appearance because behavior and appearance are outward things. The lesson is that as long as I can identify someone by their behavior, I am judging what they do, not who they are. And so astrology says one of the challenges we have with the world is that we judge each other on our actions. Not that our actions are meaningless. Certainly, it's very relevant to judge someone's actions. Make a judgment for yourself, as I said, not judge them, but judge, decide, is this my friend? Does that work for me? Can I get on with that person? Is it the one that I need for my business? All of those are legitimate types of reasons why we need to make these judgments about other people in our world all the time. Not the greater judgments that judge not that you be not judged. We don't mean that judgment. That rule always applies for us. But just in the ordinary sense of we have to make decisions all the time. The wisdom of astrology is teaching us, observe someone's actions indeed, but don't be confused to think that you are observing the person. Don't assume that by that you know them. Bottom line is, it's going to take you time. Astrology's end result is look past their actions, look past their behavior and their dress and their physical style and actions in the world, and see eventually the true person behind that. And it's a very powerful lesson because we spend way too much energy judging each other's personalities by their actions. We have good and bad actions. We all make mistakes and we all do amazing things. But that must not be confused with who the person is underneath all of that. Astrology is a very rich way of looking at what a person is all about. And one of the ways that it teaches us to deal with the world is to understand that people are not like you, and that by their actions is not necessarily who they are. Sometimes it is. It's not a license to say anyone can do what they like and we won't let that reflect on what we think about them as a person. On the contrary, it is an integrated person. That personality and persona is a legitimate part of them. It's not a fake mask that they're wearing. It does stem from them. But our error is in judging only the surface. And ultimately, the lesson of astrology there is don't judge the person by the surface, because the surface is what they are using to try and deal with the world and cope with the world just like you are. You know that what you show the world isn't your full, real self. And the compassion we need to have is that just like you, other people are doing that in order to handle the world. As you know their personality, then you can judge their actions. And that can actually take a couple of years. So give them a second chance. Finally, time for your questions. And I have a question from Lynn. Lynn says she's going to visit her daughter overseas. Is this a good time? And is there anything to worry about in her daughter's life? Is there anything going on? So firstly, when you ask, is this a good time for traveling? An astrologer would always really, if you asked me in front of me, I'd say, well, why do you mean? Is it a time to be spending the money? Or is it a time when you should rather be at home doing your stuff? Astrology's point of view is never something disastrous is going to happen. As we know, that's incredibly rare. So firstly then, the chart shows this is not an ideal time to travel if you're trying to get the personal gain we usually get from traveling. New experiences, lots of lovely shopping, interesting new places. No, it's not exactly that kind of travel, but you already know that. You're traveling probably entirely for family reasons. So it's not an ideal time for travel because the results and the benefits won't be immediately apparent. However, your chart does say it is an unavoidable time. You really do need to be traveling at this time. There is something busy going on in your daughter's life. That's really her concern and not yours to even have to fix. But the chart implies you're going there, you'll need to be a little bit supportive or tolerant of what might be a little kind of edginess or touchiness that she displays. I don't know how long you're going to be there. It usually takes a little bit of time for that to come up. But the important thing is don't take that personally. Lynn, from your chart's point of view, what you are doing there in this month that you go there in a couple of months' time is to be a strength and a pillar and a solid line. Maybe towards her, you'll need to do a little bit of the buck stops here, but maybe you'll help her deal with the world in the buck stops here fashion. So she might not even know how much she needs you there, but you'll help re-anchor her, make her solid, help her draw those lines, clarify some of the conclusions, and move forward more easily this time. So for all the usual reasons, it's not a good time to travel. You're not just going there for a jaw, but for all the right reasons, help your family establish a more solid ground. It's the perfect time for travel. Remember, your personal questions, your big cosmological questions, anything you want to know, do email me at this address or visit my website and get that question to me by Wednesday evening, and I hopefully will be able to deal with it in the next show. Remember, with your personal questions, to include your birth date, place, and time of birth if you have it, and try and make your question as specific as possible about something in the near future. Astrology deals with those really well. Hey, you can also follow me on Twitter and tweet me there as well. Don't tweet your questions because then the whole world is going to read it. But that's how you can, if you follow me, also catch up with when episodes are being uploaded, all of those kinds of things. Remember to share with your friends that there's a new episode every week, 12 noon on YouTube for free. And so I look forward to seeing you here again next week.